Fearless Families. This is Dr. Cheryl Schmidt, and welcome to the Fearless Family Health Podcast. In a world that is filled with fear, my hope is to bring you inspiration, information, and support to live more joyfully and more healthy. Come with us as we interview parents, doctors, and experts in all areas of health and vitality. Let's make you the master of your family's future. Hello and welcome to the podcast today, everybody. Today we are going to talk about a subject that is very broad and hard to define. It is actually one of the topics in health that I have the hardest time with because it is so hard to pin down this topic and what it really means, because everybody has a specific place in this world and no two people are the same. So we are going to talk about spiritual health and what having a spiritual connection really means. Joining me today and talking about spiritual health is Leanna Jane Lewis. Leanna is a multifaceted teacher, healer, mentor, and mother of two beautiful girls. She continues to integrate the power of yoga teachings, various healing modalities, and mindfulness into her coaching practice and her life. Her clients leave her programs feeling more clear and peaceful in the mind and with concrete steps to take to bring their vision into the world. Leanna has spent the last 15 plus years teaching, healing, and working with children and adults to find the grace and joy in life. So hello, Leanna. Welcome to the podcast today. I am very excited to have you here and to talk about spirituality. Spirituality is something that is really hard to pinpoint. I know I just kind of came to that idea myself lately because I feel like spirituality is my hardest area of health to figure out where I'm at. And I think part of that is because it's so hard to pinpoint what spirituality is. So I'm glad to have you on here so we can talk about what it is, what spiritual health is, and how we can find our own sense of spirituality in our lives. So hello.
Hello.
So
good. So good. This is going to be such a juicy podcast. I can feel it already. I love the open-endedness. It's very spiritual of you to just go with the flow.
Well, I know. And this is I'm like, what am I going to ask about spirituality? Because it is one of those things that it's so wide open. So when it comes to spiritual health, what does spiritual health mean to you?
Yeah, such a good question. I honestly, I think it comes down to just very basics. The awareness of who am I? Why am I here? And what am I meant to be in this lifetime? So it's an awareness I remember having very early, just the awareness of I'm here in this world, and all that, trying to wrap my head around that as a 7-year-old was pretty incredible. But there's always been this awareness of there is a purpose for us to be here. There is a purpose that we've chosen, because one spiritual way of looking at your life is that you've chosen to be here, so that you are, in a spiritual realm that we have no idea what it is until we go back to it. But you've chosen to come here and manifest yourself as a human. And that's a very profound realization of also how unlikely this is to happen. You could have come as a tree, but no, you came as a human. And so you have these human abilities now to ask yourself those deep questions. And the spirituality part of it is, how does that now fit into my day-to-day? How does that fit into the real life, which is mostly a construct of how we live, right? But how does that all affect the way that I show up to myself? And how am I with the mind and the thinking behind this? How am I with the feelings that come up around what am I here to do? And why did I choose to come into, a traumatic childhood experience? The idea that you've chosen that can be very baffling for some, but in the spiritual world, it can be very empowering and lead you to the sense of radical responsibility, so that now you see yourself as a creator and a manifester of your own divine experience in life. So it ultimately just comes down to, how are you with the question, who am I? What am I here to do? Why did I come here? So that's pretty much it for me in a very quick little nutshell.
Yeah, and there's so much in that little nutshell. That's a very
Always.
expansive nutshell.
It is. It is. That's spirituality. It's very expansive at times.
So sometimes when I talk about spiritual health with people, they automatically go to religion and they feel like
Mm.
I'm not very
Mhm.
spiritual because I don't go to church, or I'm not very
Mm.
spiritual because I don't, go to an organized religion. So what
Mhm.
is the difference for you between difference and maybe also the connection between
Mhm.
religion and spirituality?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good question. And I mean, of course, we can already assume like it's very different for every person. Everybody's path is so unique. Um, I think when it comes to like what's the difference, it's there really isn't any. Both are seeking a way to experience the divine. And when I say divine, it's the awareness of all of this that we see in life, like nature and humans and the capacity to love, your child that you just birthed and bring them to your chest. Like this is the divine experience gifted to us. And so you can be spiritual and attend church, or you can have been grown up, like grow up and have these stories that never should the two ever mix because they're so different, and yoga is the devil. And so there's like a lot of talk around that. I don't pay attention to those discussions because they don't resonate with me. If you're seeking to feel like a whole human, and however that looks for you, if it feels good, then it's good. Then it's right, it's divine, it's heaven on earth. But once we start getting into discussions around how religion is a construct, and it's part of the ills of the world, now we're not talking about God anymore. We're not talking about the message of Christ. We're not talking now. We're just talking politics. Those are two very different things. But ultimately, it's the experience of I'm here living, and I have discussions and I have rituals that help me sustain that and feel good.
So what do you think people's the biggest hiccup is for people finding their spiritual path? The biggest challenges
Mm.
they have?
So many options. There's so many options on how many on different ways you can extract a way to do it. There's it's like if you want to decide to become a coach, like, okay, well, now what kind of a coach do I want to be? Like there's like a million different opportunities and options. So I think when it comes to finding your spiritual path, it can feel and seem very overwhelming. There's so many ways to do it. Do I, what kind of yoga? Like even if we just talk about a way to experience spirituality through yoga, there are literally like I don't even have a number of different types of yoga. There's not just one. There's all kinds of facets of yoga. There's yin yoga, there's restorative yoga, there's hatha, there's ashtanga, there's so many different paths that you can take. And I think the biggest hiccup is which one is for me. And if that's where you are in your journey, you can actually just start to ask. You don't even have to believe in guides and spirits and angels, but you can just literally sit there and ask, like, hey, universe, because that's a pretty easy one. You don't have to say, hey, God, angels, just, hey, universe. I'm looking for a sign, or I'm looking for some assistance. I'm looking for some guidance. I'm looking for some support. What is it that I can experience next? And something will always, always show up to guide you along. We just don't always believe that to be true.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think a lot of people have been untrained because I think
Mm,
we have this as children.
mm,
I don't know what age it kind of seems to get squashed or squandered away, but we have this way to not listen to that internal voice or that internal dialogue and all the
yeah,
voices that come in about what we should do and should be and should think, um,
yeah, yeah,
overwhelm that internal voice.
yeah. And anything that happens typically between the ages of 2 and 7 or 8, roughly, really starts to imprint and impact what you believe to be true. So you and I could have a discussion around what you believe to be true and what your truths are. And they're going to be very different. But ultimately, if we stripped it down and we said, okay, that's a construct, that's a construct. That was somebody who told that to me. I took that on. What we would both come down to is light and love. That's it. We know that when we come from light and love and we come into that space, we spend a lot of our lives seeking it out again, finding ways to experience it. That's what spirituality is, the experience of love and light in real life, real time. But somewhere along the line, after we've come in as babies, and as we grow up around 2 or 3, that divineness that we have, that ability to be fully present, gets taken away because now we've got all these ideals coming in and beliefs that other people say that we can or can't do, even just being a girl. What that experience is, right?
Yeah, and depending on your culture, I mean, that's going to have a huge impact. And so I talk with people sometimes about our filters, and and how we all look at things from a different perspective. Even we can be talking about, like you said, the exact same thing, but our filter and our perspective is going to make us think about that in a whole different context and whole different light. So the idea of stripping those filters away is a hard one, because those are in our subconscious mind. They're things that we don't even know that are there a lot of times. What are some ways, I mean, meditation, yoga, walks in the wood, quiet walks in the wood without, your music in your head or things like that. What are some ways that you find that people can access that again?
Yeah. And the way that I take this, like this question is that, how is it that I can come back home to myself? Because a lot of clients that I work with or sisters that come into my sisterhood circles, they're like, I just want to get back to who I was, or like, I just want to get back to, because, I'm not this like yelling mummy all the time. And I'm not this nagging wife. That's not who I am. But it's how we show up, or our perception of how we show up. Like, oh, I'm such a naggy this, or I'm a yelling mom, or I'm not good at my job, or all these things, right? So these are all these layers that ultimately we want to strip away. The fastest way to strip those away is to first learn the art of being quiet with yourself. And this is a really hard one because our world is not, it gives very, very, very little value on this skill of being quiet. In fact, it's almost threatening to have that ability because so many people don't do it. And there's more merit on being fast paced and the hustle and keeping up and da da da. So all the answers that you ever want to seek, all the things that go on in your subconscious mind are yours and they're in you. And the fastest, most direct line to dial is just to sit quiet with yourself and be committed to it. Like, you'll try it the first few times and be like, this is a waste of time. Nothing's happening. My head's spinning. I'm thinking like, I'm not accessing anything. Of course you're not, because you just started. Like, no baby comes out of the womb and like all of a sudden is like talking and walking, but we expect that miraculously we're going to have this epiphany the first few times we meditate. That's not how it works. When people are very unwilling, or there's a belief that I'm not doing it right, so they're not willing to stick it out to the point where they pass the threshold and now they can go, oh, wow, yeah, I can do this now. It's to sit quiet. It's to observe yourself.
So what are some of the things that people should expect if they start to do meditation, they start to have those quiet moments with themselves? What can they expect to go on?
You have great questions, by the way. You will be uncomfortable and your mind will start to appear as though it's going quick. The reality is that your thoughts aren't quickening, or they're not faster. There's no extra thoughts in there. It's not mumbled and jumbled. The reality is that you've just dedicated a pause time to actually pay attention to your thoughts. You're thinking like tens of thousands of thoughts a day. So when you actually stop and acknowledge that this is happening and sit with it with the intention of slowing it down, it's not going to slow down right away. And we actually are always thinking. Our mind is always producing thoughts, even in our sleep. If we had no brain activity, we would be dead. So like, it's okay that we have thoughts. That's the most profound thing that people say is like, I couldn't stop thinking. I'm just not good at meditating. And the answer is yes, you are. You meditated like crazy when you were a baby. All the time. You've just given yourself more to think about. You've had more experience in life. So you've got more files that you want reorganizing all the time. So of course you're going to have thoughts. That's the biggest one.
Yeah. And part of meditation, I think, is just being aware, sitting and being aware of those thoughts. So looking at them as they go through and looking at them and saying, wow, I had no idea that I was even thinking that. Like, what does that thought mean? And then letting it go, and then letting another one come by, and like, and being aware of those. Awareness, I think, is the first step in so many things.
Oh gosh, 100%. And you're just looking to have more space between thoughts. We're not looking to let go of them. We're looking to have a different relationship where we're not judging them. We're just noticing them. I'd also make sure that your listeners know there's a lot of mythology around what meditation is and what it's supposed to look like. And I just want you to know, if you find that when you sit and like, you're trying to do it and it's not working, then maybe you want to lay down. Maybe you want to actually start your meditation practice as just falling asleep to a meditation. That's okay too. Or walking out in nature. If you find that you do something, there's an activity that you do where you notice your brain kind of turns off and now you're in a flow, like maybe cooking. Like I meditate when I cook all the time. Like that's also meditation. We're just consciously looking at our thoughts and slowing them down.
So what do you give for advice for busy ladies? Most of the people who listen to this are probably moms or dads. I think every podcast, I always say this is good for men too.
Yeah.
Like men need this as much, if not more sometimes, than women, because men are even less allowed to have quiet time or reflective time. It's not okay in our culture. I don't know about all cultures. I don't belong to all cultures, so I just can speak of my own that I've grown up with. But so people who are super driven think that they need to go and have people around all the time chattering and wanting their attention and their time. What is your tips for finding this time to do this internal work?
I'd first get in the right mindset, because the beliefs that we have around certain things in life shape how we show up to them. So if automatically your belief is that you don't have time, or that it's not a priority, or there's a subconscious belief that you're not deserving of sacred self-care, or there's this like, you see, that's going to shape how you show up to the practice. So get really clear on what is it that I believe to be true around being quiet, being alone, and meditating. Like, get really honest with how you see that to be, because that's going to affect how you show up. And be willing to give yourself the time and space, and be willing to get honest about whatever resistant thoughts you have, like, oh, well, but thoughts, I call them. Oh, well, but I've got 3 kids and I just don't have time for that. And my question or my statement is, your life doesn't have time for you to not make that a priority, because the reality is the last thing you want to have near the end of your time is like, oh, I wish I would have slowed down and appreciated life, or I wish I would have given myself. And meditation doesn't have to be this hour-long experience every day. 5 minutes goes a long way. But it is important that you also, so many parents I worked with over the years, because I was a teacher, really wanted to, like, and I get these messages still all the time from friends, like, how do I teach my kids to meditate? And it's like, well, is this like an embodied ritual in your family right now? Like, do you meditate? It's like, well, no, I don't, but I want to teach them because I know it'll help them. Well, good luck with that. Sorry to say, you have to embody the belief and the priority And it's flipping a value that you have in your home. That's all that it is.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something in that we can't overlook, and that is, are they deserving? Do you feel you are deserving of
It's a big
this?
one.
It
Yeah.
is a big one. And some people are afraid to get into that mind space because it's going to bring up some feelings.
Yes.
Meditation can bring up some things that you may be building a huge wall around and trying to not think about.
Yeah. But the reality is that you're thinking about this every day.
Yeah.
And it is in all of your cells, it's in all of your systems. Your nervous system has coped with it. Your brain literally is wired to cope with it. So all that I'm suggesting is maybe there's just a different way to be.
Yeah. And
And
it's
maybe
so
it's not that hard to flip that switch.
Yeah. And I work with people on a more of a physical level, but I have
Mhm.
some patients who kind of tease me that I'm the emotional chiropractor, because I always talk to them about
Mhm.
the importance of these things, the importance
Yeah.
of healing their emotional, social,
Mhm.
psychological health, and looking at that as a big aspect of their expression of what is going on in their body. And
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I can work on them physically until the cows come home,
Yeah.
they continue to have this stress in their body and these thoughts that are going against their healing process. It's
Absolutely.
never going to get to the level that they want. They can get a lot better, but never to the level of health that they could achieve.
Yeah. And here's a quick little story, just like riffing for a second. The other a couple weeks ago, I had this sort of like upper back pain. I thought, oh, this is like, it's kind of the back pain you get when you're breastfeeding and you're kind of hunched all the time. You're like, oh man, it feels so good to open up. So sort of this like kind of dull aching. And I'm like, man, I got to go get a massage and get this worked out. And I'm not saying massage wouldn't have been enjoyable or helpful at all, but it wouldn't have solved the problem because the actual problem ended up being in my gallstones. So I ended up having gallstones. And that even then is just a manifestation of other stuff that was going on. So there's lots of shame that I was holding on to around an experience that I had when my father passed away last summer. There was this really deep holding of shame on just certain things that happen. And it's such a depth of emotional holding and the body trying to like balance it and be like, okay, well, there's definitely stress here. What's the least like amount of trigger points I can hit in the body? Okay, I'll just do gallstones. So there's, to me, it's not a coincidence that this was going on. Like, it's not a coincidence that my body is not literally digesting and processing properly. So there's always, always a physical manifestation of emotional health. 100%.
So there's I don't know if there's much of a difference. What do you think the difference is between like psychological, emotional health and spiritual health? Or
None.
yeah,
It's just a different, now we're just getting into the semantics. Now we're just getting into the language of
yeah.
expressing those experiences. Um, we're all just humans. We're all having our human experience. We're all seeking to come home to ourselves. We are all seeking a way to fully be with light and love. But we have a very different way of describing it. Some people say, I just want to get some tools on how to de stress. What you actually really want is to feel like a whole, full human. You want to feel balanced. You don't want to feel like you have to control life anymore. So you really want to feel like you can surrender. You want to trust the process. Like, that's what you're actually ultimately seeking, not tools to help you deal with stress. But it's the language that we use. I'm not saying that being at a point in your path where you're saying, I want tools to de-stress with, like, that's still really great, but there's always bigger levels and different ways of expressing it. So no, there's really no difference, I don't think.
Yeah, and that's a big reason exactly why I'm trying to bring all these other aspects into health.
Mhm.
Like my podcast is Fearless Family Health. A lot
Yeah.
of people won't even think like spiritual health. Like, what does that have to do with health?
Mm.
But it's a huge part of healing. There was just a documentary I was watching yesterday called
Mm.
Heal, which I recommend
Mm. Yes.
everybody to watch. And
Yes.
there was a set of how many, nine to 12 things that kind of everybody that healed from these uncurable diseases or issues that they had, they were healing from them. And only 2 of them, they said, were more on the physical level, and the rest of them were on the emotional, psychological, spiritual level.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly important to take care of this part of your health and not ignore it.
Yeah.
But like you said, it all encompasses. It encompasses your physical health, because you can't have depletion in your emotional and spiritual health without affecting your physical health. It just doesn't happen. It's not neurologically possible for it to happen.
It's not. This is that oneness that we talk about, and the expression of oneness of everything being of the same. Like in yoga terms, we would say, it's this, the sound of Om is that expression of everything as one. And it's not like it sounds very woo woo and for some people, but that expression and experience of that oneness is like in real life, in real time, it shows up with how our immune system is, how our mind is functioning, like all the parts are interconnected. You can't extract them. You can't say, I'll take a pill to help my mind, because the mind is completely connected to all other parts. Your heart has certain brain cells in it, for crying out loud. Like your gut is like your second brain. You can't, now I'm not saying it's not okay or effective to take a pill to help you deal with any mental issues, by no way. Like I've been there, not for mental stuff, but I had to for some arthritis I did take Western medicine, and it was fabulous. But I also knew why this physical manifestation was happening. And so I dealt with the root of it and healed my body.
Yeah. And it's similar to what I tell people too. Western medicine is definitely valuable. But if you're looking, especially in chronic illnesses, if you're just looking at Western medicine to deal with chronic illnesses, there's probably more going on. You're not getting to the root of the cause using just Western medicine. You may need it for a time. You may need it for a long time. But you're going to need it a lot longer or forever if you don't deal with the root cause.
Yeah. And we are no different than nature. We look different. We act different than a tree, but we're not any different. We don't just have one root issue. We have many roots that over various lifetimes we will uncover. Yeah. And so maybe in this lifetime, it's just this one particular focus. But if you're really diving into the healing and the spiritual healing work of this lifetime, you will find that one root is not all that it is. And there's always another level, and you're always shedding. And because in yoga or in the spiritual world, you would say you're because you're raising your vibration. So you are, and in Kundalini yoga, they talk about this too. It's the idea that that energy is moving up and out. And so, there's going to be more than one root that you need to peel away.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
I don't know if you're familiar with chiropractic philosophy, but chiropractic philosophy is up, down, in, out. So it comes from the universe coming up, down into your body, and then out to your, out to the universe again. So it is definitely, chiropractic is very energetic, and a lot of people don't understand that. So that's why
it definitely is.
all these
I miss my chiropractor.
You have to find a new one if yours is gone or you missed one. So this is such a deep topic and a deep conversation, and it's so personal because we are all individual spiritual beings. So there is not one path at one, we're all going to take individual paths to finding our own spirituality and to connecting with that spirit. So I love talking about this. It's one of those things. That's probably why I think I have the hardest time with spirituality, because there is no right or wrong answer. There's no black or white. There's no way to do it correctly or not do it correctly.
Yeah.
And
that makes some people nervous, because there's like, what's the container? What are the rules of the game? Like, some kids are I don't know, predisposed is the right word, but their personality is such that if you're going to play a game with them, the first thing they want to know is, well, where's the rule book? And let's check that over so that we know how to play the game. Whereas then you have other kids that come in and they're like, let's just make up rules as we go. And both of them are legit, but it's very uncomfortable for some people to see this hugely expansive space of possibility where there's no real one right way or interpretation. It's like, well, how do we contain this? How do we describe it? Do we define it? You don't.
So hopefully this podcast doesn't leave like those people going like, you're supposed to tell me how to get spiritually healthy.
Well, I can, but see, this is also the other part of me that I love is that like, I love systems and I love having like a series of foundational questions. Like this is part of what I coach my clients through. This isn't just a willy-nilly process we go on for 6 months. It's like, no, there are some first, then this, right? So I can always do A, B, and C first.
So what is, if you don't mind sharing without giving away everything that you do, what would be like one or two of those first like steps that people should go through when they're trying to discover their own spirituality and going on that spiritual path?
Yeah. So one of them, which I've already mentioned, but I'm going to say it again. We have to hear things, first of all, just for all your listeners. Like you have to hear things on average about 7 different times from 7 different people. This is like very true for teachers who have students with disabilities and they're trying to illuminate this for the parents. Parents have to hear it 7 different times from 7 different people for the message to land. The same is true with new ideas that you're opening to taking on. So hopefully you'll hear this again from someone else. We have a filter system in our brain that we have created based on what we accept to be true or not. Our brain now functions from that place. It doesn't recognize whether something is true or not. It does not have the capacity to do that. It only does what it's told to do. And it's told to do certain things based on what you believe to be true. What are your guiding lights, I call them, or your eternal truths that like, I know this to be true. Your truths are what guide you. They are also changeable and flexible if you allow them to be. So just because you grew up with this idea that, having access to a good job is going to require a lot of hustle and a burnout and lots of your time and energy. If you grew up with that belief and you still carry that belief, you can actually shift and change from it. And now we can have a better sense of balance in our life. But if we're holding on to something that's not working, it's very difficult. So it's really important that we become self-reflective humans. That's a huge part of spirituality is like, can I be a reflective human? Can I appreciate myself? So not being hard on myself. Can I appreciate a sense of life on a day-to-day, not just once in a while when stuff's hitting the fan, right? So we can ask ourselves, what do I believe to be true? And if that question alone is just too vast, like, well, what do you mean? What do I believe about what? Because that's where my brain goes. What do I believe to be true about family? What do I believe to be true about relationships? What do I believe to be true about money? What do I believe to be true about what it means to be a parent? What do I believe to be true around my value and worth? Where do I sit with all of that? So we have to start asking ourselves, from where am I operating from? From what beliefs are guiding the choices I make and therefore the experiences I have out of life? So just asking those questions alone is a great start. And then like we're living in the age of so much information. So just pick 1 or 2 people that you want to follow them and listen to their message. I actually would highly recommend listening to Sadhguru as a start because he's a mystic from India who he doesn't use fancy language. He talks very just straightforward. It's just so easy to digest what he says and go, yeah, that's so simple. So his name is Sadhguru. It's SADH Guru, GURU. And he's on YouTube, and literally just listen to him to start with. He's so, so good. So good.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that. I'll make sure, and I'll probably put the link to his Is it YouTube? Does he have any other?
You can subscribe to his YouTube channels.
Cool.
He does talks all over the world. He's in the States a lot, actually, more than in Canada.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely put a link to him too, so people can reach out and find that YouTube channel. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to leave us with? Anything we can talk about?
I'm going to leave your listeners with one of my favorite ways to wake up and go to bed. It's literally two things. How we start and finish our day has a huge impact on just how we experience every day. So if you wake up, please allow yourself to give yourself permission to say, I am awake now and I am fully rested, and now I begin my day. And it sounds so simple, but we often don't start our day like that. We start our day already in scarcity of like, I didn't get enough sleep. There's too many things to do. I'm choosing now to wake up. It's a choice I've made. Now we're empowering ourselves. And then before you go to bed, like I'm not going to lie. Like I go to bed and I like watch a show often and I'll fall asleep with Netflix. But like before I close the screen or before I even turn on the Netflix, like just to have a moment of pause and to say, today I really appreciated so now we're in a place of appreciation. This isn't just gratitude. This is like a full expression of, I really appreciated how I go back through your day and find something really good to feel good about. I appreciated how I told my husband what I needed for the first time. Yeah, those are like really easy ones I would start with. And they're very practical.
And we are recording this on like the day after we just did our time change. So that morning one is even more of a struggle for a few people.
100%. I have a daughter who's like wakes me up at 6 every day. So.
Well, thank you so much, Leanna. There's so many gems and so much wisdom. Spirituality is a very broad subject, but I think we have, for those people who need rules and tools, we have some rules and tools, and we can get started on that journey of spiritual health.
Yes. Namaste to that.
Thank you, and namaste to you. Thank you for joining us on the Fearless Family Health Podcast. Show notes and resources covered in this podcast are available on our website at fearlessfamilyhealth.com. You can also join in on the conversation with other Fearless families on our Facebook group, Fearless Family Health. If you like what you hear and want to hear more, please subscribe to upcoming casts and rate us on iTunes. And also, don't forget to share it with your friends so we can all be fearless.